At over 15 liters of liquor per person per year, alcohol consumption in Russia per capita exceeds almost every other country in the world. Russia has the highest alcoholism rate in Europe, caused by high overall population drinking and the frequency of irregular heavy drinking of spirits such as vodka. Many things influence the amount of alcohol consumed by Russian citizens, such as government regulations, societal expectations, and ease of access. But before we discuss alcoholism specifically in Putin's Russia today, I think it's important to briefly go back into history to find out how the pretty accurate stereotypes originated. After the Bolsheviks came to power, they attempted to reduce consumption of alcohol. Then, in order to generate revenue, Joseph Stalin re-established the sale of alcohol through the state monopoly. Although several short-lived alcohol control campaigns occurred between 1950 and 1985, the topic did not hold much importance to the Soviet government. In 1972, an act passed that increased propaganda and education about alcohol and began to restrict the access. The production of vodka and the number of stores allowed to distribute it decreased by government order. Soviet leaders Andropov and Chernenko hoped this would lead to a rise in workplace discipline and public behavior. Then, in 1985, Gorbachev realized the severity of alcohol consumption and dependence throughout his country and launched his own anti-alcohol campaign. His movement restricted the alcohol purchasing hours, raised alcohol prices drastically, made home production almost impossible, and destroyed many vineyards across the Soviet Union. Unfortunately, the major political, economic, and social troubles of the 1990s made Gorbachev's attempts futile. The fall of the Soviet Union and subsequent price liberation allowed vodka to experience record low prices. Alcohol consumption and alcoholism reached new highs. In 1997, a State Duma committee asked Parliament to draft a new policy regarding alcohol in response to their concerns of, quote, mass drunkenness. Most of these campaigns initially worked, lowering alcohol-related crimes and deaths, but eventually failed due to the overwhelmingly unpopular public opinion. Today, there are few laws restricting or limiting the purchase or manufacturing of alcohol. In fact, almost every single town and village in Russia has their own local samagon or moonshine producer. Also, politicians running on anti-alcohol campaigns are pretty much committing political suicide. Alcoholism could be considered a Russian national emergency. Today, about 22.7% of Russia's population suffers from alcoholism. It affects everyone, from doctors to postal workers to government employees, leaving the country in a crisis. The average death age between males and females has the largest gap of any country in the world, at 11 years apart. Russians consume about half of the world's hard liquor. As of 2013, Russia's government reported over 500,000 annual alcohol-related deaths, also mentioning the staggering amount of alcohol consumed per capita, which exceeds double the, quote, dangerous level put in place by the World Health Organization. Besides the obvious health detriments caused by alcohol, Russia's economy also suffers from overdrinking. Estimations put the country's annual loss of production at over $8 million. Crime positively correlates with alcohol consumption. Intoxicated people account for more than 20% of crime committed in Russia. Russian crime rates lead many other countries in the world. Its murder rate dwarfs the United Kingdom's by 10 times. Robberies occur 35 times more often in Russia than in Japan. Only 43% of Russians say they feel safe on the streets at night in urban areas, which is the second lowest percentage in the world, only to South Africa. In addition, Russia has one of the highest suicide rates in the world. Unsurprisingly, alcohol plays a huge role in suicide occurrences. Studies and experts estimate over half of suicides result from some sort of alcohol abuse or dependency. So how does this all come together in Putin's Russia? Putin made his health-conscious way of life a big part of his campaign, with his avid sobriety taking up a lot of that image. This is in stark contrast to his drunken predecessor, Boris Yeltsin, who was known for his love of the bottle. Yeltsin's constant slurred speeches along with televised drinking, dancing, and singing, only perpetuated the stereotype of drunken Russians following the fall of the Soviet Union. Putin actively tries to be the opposite type of public figure Yeltsin was, and you would never witness him doing half of the shenanigans Boris Yeltsin did. Putin attempts to be a good role model to his citizens, specifically male, by pushing his sporty, masculine, and super fit, healthy image. We also saw this in the Takova Cock Putin video that we watched in class. In 2010, Dmitry Medvedev, with Putin as his prime minister, increased vodka prices and limited purchasing hours. This has brought liquor consumption down slightly, but the next problem the president faces is the general public's view on non-liquor alcohol. There is an issue with alcohol in all generations. Young people today actually consider beer to be a, quote, soft drink. They routinely buy it on any street corner and sip it while taking a walk. They drink beer casually on their lunch breaks. At the price of a soda, and so widely accepted to be unharmful, many young Russians drink beer habitually any day of the week. In older generations, they validate their drinking habits by chalking it up to, quote, enduring the hard Russian way of life. Even Russian authors attempt to link the lack of vodka to major economic changes. Alexander Nikishin writes in his book, Vodka and Gorbachev, quote, what did the 1914 vodka shortage lead to? The Russian Revolution of 1917. What did the dry law lead to? The collapse of the Soviet Union. Another issue the Russian population encounters is the lack of resources when someone is reliant on alcohol. There are very few AA meetings across the entire country, leaving alcoholics to turn to untrained church officials for their dependency. Coding, a form of alternative psychotherapy that involves the patient believing death will result if they drink alcohol, is just now finally losing popularity due to its known ineffectiveness. Really, the only punishment for public drunkenness is a night in a sober cell, which are always filled to capacity. It is also not uncommon for some doctors to recommend alcohol or liquor as a way to cleanse or sterilize the body of disease, which only prolongs a societally accepted drunkenness. This absurd suggestion leads us into how Russia is dealing with another widespread issue affecting everyone in the world today, the coronavirus. Putin has ordered all non-essential employees to stay home from work for the entire month of April, paid. This break for many has turned into a month-long, binge-worthy, extended vacation. Similar to around the holidays, people are using this as an excuse to drink to excess all day, many days in a row. Reports say vodka sales shot up 65% this month from last. In turn, crime and domestic violence are up 25% from last month. The government had to quickly pass special laws pertaining to alcohol sales during the coronavirus crisis to try to limit these offenses. In addition, the false claim that, quote, vodka can kill the coronavirus from Belarus's president did a lot of harm, as it took 2 whole weeks for the Russian government to discredit that statement. Thankfully, there is some good news. Russia's health minister, Veronika Skvortsova, began working for the government in 2008 when the liquor consumption per capita was over 18 liters annually. Now, 12 years later, she has helped to pass regulations that increase excise tax on liquor, ban sales after 11 p.m. and from sports events, and remove alcohol advertisements from television. Her next initiative is to raise the drinking age for hard liquors to 21 years old and begin teaching abstinence from the drink to school children. She is actively pushing for more Alcoholics Anonymous groups and has already increased the amount in Moscow tenfold. Russia is beginning to address their great problem of alcoholism head-on by increasing strict government laws and regulations, validating alcoholics' mental health and having available treatment centers, and focusing on a better future country with reduced crime and senseless deaths. Russia could lose its title as the highest consumer of vodka per capita and all of the negative connotations that go along with that. Putin has definitely begun the decline of alcoholism throughout Russia, but greater steps are needed if he wants to completely eradicate one of the biggest national emergencies in the country.